Welcome to a deep dive into a world I think a lot of people can only imagine.
Yeah.
We're going to be cracking open Perry Bulwer's memoir, Misguided, My Jesus Freak Life in a Doomsday Cult,
Really fascinating case.
and trying to understand what it's like to not only join a group that many consider a cult, but
Wait,
to leave
yeah.
and then actually rejoin.
It's very unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
You rarely hear about this kind of back and forth with groups like the Children of God, also known as the Family.
Right. Bulwer spent nearly 2 decades intertwined with this group,
Right.
almost as much time outside of it before his final escape.
Wow.
So the big question for me is, what could make someone go back to such an intense environment after having tasted freedom?
To understand that, we need to go back even further
Yeah.
to Bulwer's life before he ever encountered the Children of God.
Okay.
He grew up in this tiny mill town in British Columbia called Port Alberni,
Uh-huh.
feeling pretty stifled, And this is all happening against the backdrop of the 1960s.
Oh, yeah.
Social upheaval,
Mm-hmm.
the Vietnam War, the whole counterculture movement.
You can practically feel that teenage angst brewing.
Right.
He even hitchhiked to California at 15.
Wow.
Got a taste of that alternative lifestyle.
Yeah.
Even had a brief run-in with some Jesus freaks.
Oh,
Talk about foreshadowing.
exactly. These early experiences are crucial.
Yeah.
It's like he was already searching for something outside the mainstream, questioning the traditional path.
Yeah.
That encounter with the Jesus freaks is particularly interesting.
Uh-huh.
It foreshadows his later susceptibility to a similar but far more intense group.
Okay, so we've got this restless teenager primed for something different.
Right.
Then, bam, he encounters the children of God.
Yeah.
It's almost accidental.
Wow.
He's targeted in a restaurant, and their initial message is basic Christianity, which really resonated with his Catholic upbringing.
And that's where the love bombing comes in.
Oh, yeah.
A classic cult tactic.
Uh-huh.
They shower him with attention and acceptance, creating this intense sense of belonging and dependency.
Yeah.
It's like being wrapped in a warm blanket, but you don't realize it's slowly suffocating you.
And he falls for it.
Yeah.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Wow.
Within weeks, he's completely immersed in their world.
Wow, that's fast.
No privacy, constant monitoring, even rules about how much toilet paper you can use.
Really.
It's almost comical if it weren't so disturbing.
The toilet paper rule is a perfect example
Yeah.
of how this control permeates every aspect of their lives, even the most mundane.
Right.
It's not just about saving resources. It's about asserting dominance,
Mm-hmm.
breaking down individuality, and fostering what we call groupthink.
Right, and they back it all up with Bible verses,
Right.
creating this air of unquestionable authority.
Yeah.
You can see how someone like Bulwer, already questioning traditional paths,
Right.
could be swept up in this.
Absolutely.
It's important to remember that they're not necessarily targeting gullible people.
Right.
They're looking for individuals who are searching, who are open to new ideas, who might be disillusioned with the world around them.
Exactly.
And then there's the leader,
Right.
David Berg, who called himself Mo.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, he's kept hidden,
Oh, interesting.
almost like a mythical figure, but his letters presented as wise guidance
Yeah?
are slowly woven into the fabric of the group's belief system.
That's the bait and switch in action.
Yeah.
They start with familiar, even comforting Christian beliefs, making it easier for recruits to accept the message.
Uh-huh.
Then, they gradually elevate Berg's authority, placing his word on par with,
Yeah.
or even above, the Bible itself.
And here come those doomsday prophecies.
Oh, yeah.
Berg declares himself an end-time prophet, predicting America's destruction
Wow.
and laying out a specific timeline for the Antichrist and Jesus' return.
Think about the impact of those prophecies, particularly on someone like Bulwer,
Yeah.
who's already primed for a world on the brink.
Right.
They create a sense of urgency,
Mm-hmm.
reinforcing the us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
It's no longer just about finding meaning. It's about being part of the chosen few who hold the key to salvation.
Wow.
It's heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff. So
Yeah.
Bulwer, fueled by these apocalyptic prophecies, sets off with the children of God,
Right.
traveling to Hawaii, then Japan, Korea, the Philippines.
Wow.
I
Also,
feel like this is a strange mix of missionary work and nomadic lifestyle, right?
exactly. And for a young man who felt trapped in a small town, this must have been incredibly alluring.
Yeah.
It's adventure purpose, a sense of global importance, all wrapped up in one.
Yeah.
But of course, it's all carefully orchestrated to reinforce the group's worldview.
It's like being on a permanent mission trip, but the destination is always the same.
Right.
Deeper into the cult's ideology.
Right.
And for 4 years, Bulwer buys into it.
Okay.
But then, disillusioned with the leadership and the increasingly harsh rules, he actually leaves the Children of God.
This is where we see that cracks can appear even in the most seemingly airtight systems. Internal dissent, power struggles, evolving doctrines, all of these can chip away at the facade.
And here's where our story takes that really fascinating turn.
Okay.
After 3 years living outside the group, Bulwer voluntarily rejoins. What's going on there? I mean, he's seen behind the curtain. Why go back?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it speaks to the complex psychology of cult membership.
Uh-huh.
Even when you see the flaws, the manipulation,
Yeah.
there's often this lingering pull.
Is it like a gravitational force?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
There's the comfort of familiarity, the sense of belonging that's hard to replicate in the outside world.
Right.
And for Bulwer, there were likely unresolved questions, those lingering apocalyptic beliefs that still held a certain allure.
Plus, the Children of God were known to actively seek out former members,
Oh, really?
promising change, a more welcoming environment.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a comeback, we've changed kind of campaign.
Exactly. They prey on the vulnerabilities of those who have already been indoctrinated,
Yep.
knowing that they're more likely to succumb to those familiar narratives, those promises of acceptance and redemption.
So Bulwer is back in, and for the next 15 years, he travels across Canada back to Asia, witnessing even more extreme control and disturbing incidents of abuse. I imagine this period must have been incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
seeing the group you've chosen becoming more and more warped.
Absolutely. This is where we see Bulwer grappling with cognitive dissonance,
Mm-hmm.
that mental discomfort that arises from holding conflicting beliefs.
Yeah.
On one hand, he's still drawn to the group's message, the sense of purpose it provides.
Right.
But on the other hand, he's witnessing things that clash with their professed love and righteousness.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion, knowing you're somehow on board and unable to jump off.
A very apt analogy.
Yeah.
And it's during this period that the seeds of doubt truly begin to take root.
Okay.
He's seeing the hypocrisy. The cracks in the facade are widening, and eventually those cracks become impossible to ignore.
So what was the tipping point? What finally led Bulwer to escape for good?
There wasn't one single event, but rather a culmination of experiences that chipped away at his belief system.
Okay.
A key turning point was witnessing the mistreatment of David Berg's own granddaughter.
Wow.
She was deemed rebellious, and the way she was treated was a stark contrast to the group's supposed values of love and compassion.
The hypocrisy must have been jarring.
It is.
It's like the ultimate betrayal, seeing the leader's own family subjected to the same kind of abuse they claim to abhor.
Right, and it's around this time that Berg's pronouncements become increasingly bizarre and outlandish.
Oh, wow.
The prophecies aren't coming true, the logic is breaking down,
Yeah.
and Bulwer is starting to see the man behind the curtain, so to speak.
There's a detail in the book that really struck me. Bulwer describes secretly listening to a radio broadcast of REM's Losing My Religion,
Wow.
and it resonated deeply with his inner turmoil.
Right.
It's such a small thing,
Yeah.
but it seems to have had a profound impact.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It speaks to the power of outside information, even something as seemingly innocuous as a pop song.
Yeah.
For Bulwer, it was a crack in the wall of his indoctrination, a glimpse of something beyond the cult's narrow worldview.
It's like that first breath of fresh air after being trapped in a stuffy room.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it gave him the courage to start planning his escape, a process that was fraught with its own dangers and challenges.
Because he's in Asia at this point.
Right.
No money, no support network.
Right.
Leaving is going to be incredibly difficult, and what awaits him on the outside isn't exactly a welcoming party.
You're right. He's facing a world he barely knows, grappling with the trauma of his experiences, the guilt, the confusion.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his resilience that he was able to navigate those challenges and eventually build a new life.
And that new life includes education, which Bulwer describes as crucial for his deprogramming.
Okay.
He attends Vancouver Island University, starts speaking out about his experiences, advocating for other survivors.
This is where we see Bulwer taking control of his narrative.
Yeah.
He's not just a victim, he's an agent of change.
Right.
And that shift is essential for healing, for reclaiming one's agency.
It's like he's taking all that pain, all that anger, and channeling it into something positive. something that can help others who have been through similar experiences.
Exactly. And his focus on second-generation survivors, those born into the children of God, is particularly important.
Right.
Their stories are often even more complex and heartbreaking, as they never had a choice in the matter.
So let's talk about those second-generation survivors.
Okay.
Their experiences are unique and often even more challenging than those who join the group later in life.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to emphasize that their stories are not just extensions of Bulwer's experience.
Okay.
They deserve their own space, their own platform to share their truths and demand accountability.
Well, let's delve into that then.
Okay.
What are some of the unique challenges faced by those born and raised within the children of God?
The biggest challenge is that they were never given a choice.
Right.
They were born into a system of totalistic control, where every aspect of their lives was dictated by the cult's ideology.
So their entire reality was shaped by this group from their earliest memories.
Exactly, and that kind of control goes far beyond just beliefs.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about restricted access to education, health care, even basic freedoms that most of us take for granted.
Right.
They were isolated from the outside world, their entire social network confined to the cult.
Bulwer describes their upbringing as systematic child abuse, which is a stark assessment.
Right.
What kind of abuse are we talking about specifically?
We're talking about physical punishment, often quite harsh and arbitrary.
Okay.
We're talking about emotional manipulation and control, using guilt and fear to enforce obedience. And in many cases, we're talking about sexual exploitation, all justified under the guise of religious doctrine.
That's horrific. And to make matters worse, this abuse was often perpetrated by their own parents who were themselves indoctrinated and under the sway of the cult's leadership.
It's one of the most disturbing aspects of cult dynamics.
Yeah.
The way they exploit familial bonds, turning parents into instruments of control and abuse.
Right.
It creates this incredibly complex web of trauma where the people who were supposed to be your protectors become your abusers.
I imagine that creates a profound sense of confusion and betrayal for those children.
Absolutely.
Who do you turn to when the people you should be able to trust the most are the ones inflicting the harm?
Exactly. And that betrayal often carries over into adulthood.
Right.
As these survivors struggle to form healthy relationships, navigate the complexities of family dynamics, and come to terms with what happened to them.
It's like their entire foundation of trust has been shattered.
It is.
And on top of that, they're dealing with the trauma of the abuse itself.
Right. Many struggle with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming healthy attachment.
Oh.
They may also face challenges in reintegrating into mainstream society, lacking basic life skills, having limited education, and often feeling alienated from a world they never really knew.
And then there's the added layer of guilt and shame that many second-generation survivors carry.
Right.
They often blame themselves for what happened, feeling like they should have spoken up sooner or somehow escaped.
It's a heartbreaking reality.
It is.
But it's important to remember that these were children trapped in a system designed to manipulate and control.
Yeah.
They were never given a fair chance.
Which is why Bulwer's work and the work of other advocates like him is so important.
Right.
It's about giving voice to these survivors, validating their experiences, and holding the cult accountable for the harm it inflicted.
Absolutely. It's about truth-telling, about challenging the narratives that allowed this abuse to flourish, and ensuring that history doesn't repeat itself.
And it's about recognizing the complexities of these experiences, acknowledging that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to healing from this kind of trauma.
Each survivor's journey is unique, and their needs are diverse.
Right.
But there are common threads that run through these stories.
Yeah.
The need for validation, for support, for access to resources that can help them reclaim their lives.
So what can we do as individuals who are listening to this to support these survivors and help prevent this kind of abuse from happening in the future?
First and foremost, we need to listen.
Yeah.
We need to believe survivors when they share their stories without judgment or skepticism.
It's about creating a space where they feel safe to speak their truth without fear of being dismissed or invalidated.
Exactly. And we need to educate ourselves about the dynamics of cults.
Right.
The tactics they use, the red flags to watch out for.
Because this isn't just about one group, the children of God.
Right.
It's about recognizing the patterns of abuse that can exist in any organization, any community where power is concentrated and individuals are silenced.
You're right. And it's about speaking out against these abuses.
Yeah.
Challenging any ideology that seeks to justify harm in the name of belief or tradition.
It's about being vigilant, about protecting the most vulnerable among us, and ensuring that no child ever has to endure the horrors that Bulwer and countless others have experienced.
And it's about supporting organizations that are working to help survivors heal and rebuild their lives, providing them with the resources and the community they need to thrive.
It's a lot to take in, and it's certainly not easy to confront these dark realities.
Right.
But I think it's a conversation we need to be having, especially in a world where extremism and fundamentalism continue to threaten the most vulnerable among us.
I agree. Bulwer's story is a powerful reminder that silence is complicity,
Yeah.
that ignorance is no excuse, and that we all have a role to play in preventing this kind of abuse from happening in the future.
And on that note, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the psychological impact of cult membership.
Okay.
We've touched on some of the long-term effects, but I think it's worth delving deeper into the specific ways that these experiences can shape an individual's sense of self, their relationships, and their overall well-being.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
The psychological scars of cult membership can be incredibly deep and long-lasting, and understanding the nature of this trauma is essential for providing effective support and promoting healing.
Let's start with the concept of identity.
Okay.
How does belonging to a group like the Children of God impact an individual's sense of self?
Cults thrive on controlling information, on shaping how members perceive themselves and the world around them.
Uh-huh.
They often create a rigid us versus them mentality where the cult is the sole source of truth and righteousness,
Right.
while the outside world is viewed as corrupt and dangerous.
So it's like living in a bubble where your entire reality is defined by the group's ideology.
Exactly. And within that bubble, individual identity is often suppressed.
Right.
Members are encouraged to conform to the group's norms, to adopt a uniform way of thinking and behaving.
Okay.
Their personal beliefs, values, and aspirations are often dismissed or even demonized as evidence of their unconverted state.
It's like they're being stripped of their individuality, forced to fit into a mold that's determined by the cult's leadership.
Precisely. And that can have a devastating impact on their sense of self-worth, their ability to trust their own judgment, and their capacity for independent thought and action.
So when they leave the cult, they're not just facing the challenge of reintegrating into society.
Right.
They're also grappling with the loss of their identity, the very foundation of who they thought they were.
It's a profound loss, and it often triggers feelings of emptiness, confusion, and a sense of not knowing who they are anymore.
Yeah.
Many survivors describe it as feeling like they're starting their lives over from scratch, having to rebuild their sense of self from the ground up.
That's a daunting task, and it's made even more challenging by the psychological manipulation that they've been subjected to.
Right.
They've been taught to doubt their own perceptions, to distrust their emotions, and to rely on the cult for all answers and guidance.
Absolutely. The cult's ideology becomes deeply ingrained in their psyche, shaping their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors long after they've left the group.
Wow.
It's like an internalized voice that whispers, doubts, reinforces fears, and undermines their attempts to break free from the cult's influence.
So even when they're physically free, they're still battling the psychological grip of the cult.
Yeah.
The lingering effects of indoctrination.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to provide survivors with access to specialized therapy and support groups.
Oh.
They need a safe space to process their experiences, to deconstruct the cult's ideology, and to reclaim their sense of self.
It's about helping them develop critical thinking skills, learning to trust their own intuition, and building a new identity that's based on their own values and aspirations.
Right. It's about empowering them to take control of their own lives, to make their own choices, and to define their own sense of purpose and meaning.
So let's talk about the impact of cult membership on relationships. We know that the Children of God often discouraged close ties outside of the group, viewing outsiders as potential threats to their belief system.
Right.
How does that isolation affect survivors' ability to form healthy relationships?
The cult's control over social connections is a key part of their strategy for maintaining power and preventing dissent. They create a closed system where members are heavily reliant on the group for social interaction, emotional support, and even basic needs like food and shelter.
So it's like they're intentionally cutting off ties to the outside world, making members completely dependent on the cult.
Exactly, and that dependency breeds fear.
Right.
Members are afraid to speak out or challenge the group's ideology for fear of being ostracized, losing their support network, and facing the unknown dangers of the outside world.
So when survivors do leave the cult, they often find themselves isolated and alone,
Right.
struggling to connect with people who haven't shared their experiences.
That's a common challenge many survivors described, feeling like they're from another planet. Like they don't fit in with people who haven't been through the same kind of indoctrination and control.
It's like they're speaking a different language,
Yeah.
one that's rooted in the cult's ideology and worldview.
And that can lead to feelings of alienation, loneliness, and a sense of not belonging.
Yeah.
It can also make it difficult to form new relationships, as survivors may be hesitant to trust, to open up, and to share their experiences with others.
They may also struggle with boundaries,
Yeah,
having been taught to prioritize the group's needs over their own.
absolutely. They may have difficulty saying no, setting limits, and protecting their own emotional well-being.
Right.
They may also be vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation, having been conditioned to defer to authority figures and to suppress their own needs and desires.
So it's not just about learning to navigate the social norms of the outside world.
Right.
It's about unlearning the patterns of behavior that were ingrained in them during their time in the cult.
Right. It's about relearning how to trust, how to set boundaries, how to assert their own needs, and how to build healthy reciprocal relationships based on mutual respect and understanding.
And that often requires specialized therapy,
Yeah.
where survivors can explore the impact of the cult's ideology on their relationships, develop healthy coping mechanisms, and learn to navigate the complexities of interpersonal dynamics.
Therapy can also provide a safe space to process the trauma of their experiences, including any abuse or neglect they may have suffered within the cult. Many survivors struggle with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges as a result of their time in the group.
So it's not just about rebuilding their lives on a practical level.
Right.
It's about addressing the deep psychological wounds that have been inflicted.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that healing is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
It takes time, patience, and a lot of hard work to overcome the effects of cult membership.
And it's a journey that survivors don't have to take alone. There are resources available, support groups, therapists who specialize in cult recovery, and organizations that are dedicated to helping survivors heal and rebuild their lives.
It's about creating a community of support where survivors can feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
It's about providing them with the tools they need to reclaim their lives and to thrive in a world that can often feel overwhelming and confusing.
Bulwer's story is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the ability to overcome even the most profound adversity.
Right.
But it's also a stark reminder of the lasting impact of cult membership,
Yeah.
the psychological scars that can linger long after the physical escape.
And it's a call to action for all of us to be more aware of the dangers of cults, to be more supportive of survivors, and to work together to prevent this kind of abuse from happening in the future.
So let's shift gears one last time and talk about Bulwer's life after his final escape from the Children of God.
Okay.
We know he turned to education as a way to deprogram himself, but what did that process look like? How did he rebuild his life and find meaning after such a profound experience? We've been unpacking Perry Bulwer's experience in and out of the Children of God, and it's clear his story isn't a neat and tidy escape and recover tale.
No, not at all.
It's way more complex than that.
It really is, and we need to talk more about the second-generation survivors,
Yeah.
those born and raised within the Children of God.
Right.
They faced unique challenges.
Imagine growing up with the cult as your only reality parents, teachers.
Yeah.
Your whole world reinforcing this rigid ideology.
Right.
It's totalistic control, right? Like that term gets thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean in this context?
Good point. It means the group controls virtually every aspect of your life. In the Children of God, this included isolating children from the outside world, limiting access to education and healthcare, even dictating their clothing and hairstyles.
Yeah.
It's about eliminating individuality and making the group's ideology the only lens through which you see the world.
Bulwer doesn't mince words. He calls this upbringing systematic child abuse.
Yeah, it's a tough term.
What were kids subjected to specifically?
We're talking harsh punishments for minor infractions, forced labor, and tragically frequent sexual exploitation,
Oh my God.
all justified using twisted interpretations of the Bible.
It makes you sick to think about it. And the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
These abuses were often at the hands of their own parents, who were themselves indoctrinated.
Exactly. This creates such a tangled web of trauma.
Right.
Imagine trying to process the fact that the people who should protect you were the ones inflicting harm.
Right.
It messes with your whole understanding of trust and safety.
Bulwer emphasizes that these childhood experiences leave deep, lasting scars.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just about escaping the group, it's about healing from profound psychological wounds.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Many second-generation survivors struggle with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming healthy relationships.
Yeah.
It's also hard to reintegrate into mainstream society when you lack basic life skills or education,
Uh-huh.
because the cult actively prevented you from learning them.
And on top of all that, there's this layer of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Some survivors blame themselves, thinking they should have spoken up or escaped sooner.
It's heartbreaking, but a common response to trauma.
It is.
We need to emphasize that these were children trapped in a manipulative system.
Right.
Blaming themselves adds another layer of suffering to what they've already endured.
Bulwer's work in giving voice to these second-generation survivors is so crucial.
Yeah, it really is.
It's about truth-telling, holding the abusers accountable, and ensuring history doesn't repeat itself.
He also challenged the idea that religious freedom can ever justify child abuse.
Right.
That line needs to be drawn clearly no matter what beliefs a group holds.
Uh-huh.
Children's rights to safety and well-being must always come first.
That's such a powerful message.
Yeah,
This deep dive has been heavy, but Bulwer's story also offers hope.
it does.
He didn't just escape, he found ways to heal and make a difference.
That's the incredible thing about his journey.
Mm-hmm.
Education was central to his deprogramming. It wasn't just about acquiring knowledge, it was about learning to think critically and challenge the cult's ideology.
He talks about Vancouver Island University as this incredibly liberating experience. Like he was finally allowed to ask questions, explore different ideas, and reclaim his intellectual autonomy.
It's like he was rediscovering his own mind after years of being told what to think.
Right.
And that newfound ability to think critically became a tool for him to help others.
He didn't shy away from difficult conversations. He challenged academics who downplayed the children of God's abuses,
Right.
spoke at conferences, and wrote extensively,
Wow.
all to amplify the voices of survivors and expose the truth.
What's inspiring is that he focused on empowering others.
Yeah.
He knew firsthand the challenges of reintegrating into society, the psychological scars, the difficulty of being believed. He wanted to make that path easier for those who came after him.
His story highlights the importance of having support systems, access to therapy, and safe spaces where
Yes.
survivors can process their experiences and begin to heal, right?
It also underscores the need for continued awareness and education about cults.
Yeah.
These groups don't always fit the stereotypes.
Right.
They could be sophisticated, blend in, and exploit people's vulnerabilities.
Right.
Bulwer's work is a call to be vigilant, to question what we're told, and to support those who have been harmed.
I think this deep dive has given our listener a lot to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some final thoughts you want to leave them with?
If there's one thing I hope they take away, it's this. Question everything.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be afraid to challenge authority, seek multiple perspective, and trust your gut.
Yeah.
If something feels off, it probably is.
Right.
And if you or someone you know has been affected by a cult, know that there is hope, there is help, and you don't have to go through this alone.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a challenging,
It has been.
but ultimately, I think, hopeful exploration of one man's journey
Yeah,
and the broader lessons we can all learn from it.
it's been a privilege to be part of this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
To our listener, thank you for taking this deep dive with us.